They say honesty keeps love alive, but sometimes it's the lies we tell ourselves that make it impossible to breathe. I never meant to fall for her. Not really. When I first met Elena, she was the kind of woman people look at twice, but not because she tried to be noticed. She had that quiet, lived-in grace, the kind that comes from surviving more winters than you'd ever admit out loud. I was 26, still figuring out how to live without pretending I already knew how. She was married then. At least, that's what I told myself to remember whenever I caught my eyes lingering too long. It started in the smallest way, messages about books, about photography, about the way rain sounds when you stop trying to talk over it. Nothing heavy, nothing wrong, except it was too easy talking to her, too easy to forget where the lines were. There was one night I'll never forget. She'd texted me past midnight. Can't sleep. Tell me something beautiful. I stared at that message for minutes, heart racing, fingers frozen, before replying. You are. She never responded. Not that night. But the next morning, she sent a photo of her coffee mug, half empty on her windowsill. Caption: You shouldn't say things like that. I didn't know if she was warning me, or herself. Months passed like that. Messages that started as banter and turned into something softer. I'd tell her about my shoots, the way sunlight clung to certain faces, and she'd tell me about her husband, though never with emotion, just the facts like reading weather reports from another city. Sometimes she'd say, You're too young to understand. And I'd answer, Maybe, but I still listen better than he does. She'd smile at that, soft, distant, and change the subject. It wasn't a love story yet, just two people drifting closer in the quiet. The night it changed, she invited me to her gallery opening. I almost didn't go, because some part of me already knew I'd see her differently there. But I went. She was wearing black silk, hair tied up like she didn't want to seem like she cared, but I could tell she did. When she saw me across the room, something in her face faltered, just a second of real emotion before she looked away. Later, she came to me. You shouldn't have come, she said. Then why'd you invite me? I asked. She didn't answer. She just looked at me, the kind of look that said everything she couldn't say out loud. I remember standing too close, both of us pretending not to notice. Her perfume, vanilla and rain. The way her hands trembled when she fixed her bracelet. The way I wanted to reach out, just to stop them from shaking. But I didn't. Not yet. A week later, she sent me a message that started it all. He thinks I'm asleep. I'm not. I stare at my screen, pulse thudding in my ears. Before I could reply, another message came in. Do you ever wonder if we crossed a line? I didn't know what to say. I wanted to be brave. To tell her what I already knew, that the line was gone the moment I stopped being able to imagine a day without her voice in it. But before I could type a single word, her next message appeared, short, trembling, almost like a confession. Don't read the rest of this if you still think it's just friendship. And then, a notification. One unread message. I didn't open her message that night. Not because I didn't want to, but because I already knew what it might say. And once I read it, I couldn't go back to pretending. By morning, I told myself I'd delete it. Start over. But I didn't. When I finally opened it, all it said was, I wish things were different. No context. No signature. Just that. I read it again and again, like the words themselves were breathing. And for the first time, I felt afraid of her. Not because of what she'd done, but because of how much I wanted her to mean it. Elena wasn't like the women I'd known before. She moved differently, thought before she spoke. She'd lived a whole life before I ever walked into her world. One with a husband who'd stopped looking at her years ago, a daughter who'd gone off to college, and a house full of furniture that felt like it belonged to someone else. She'd once told me, marriage isn't love. It's patience, sometimes too much of it. I laughed then, not realizing how much of her truth was hidden inside that line. I think that's what pulled me in, not her beauty, not the danger, but the way she made silence feel like a language only we understood. For weeks, we danced around the subject. Coffee after her classes. Long walks where we didn't touch, but everything in the air felt like a touch waiting to happen. She'd tell me about her past, how she met her husband when she was 22, how she used to write poems but stopped when life got too loud. Once she asked, "Do you ever regret being born too late?" I didn't get it then. Now I do. She meant for me. For us. There was a day, one I still replay like a movie I can't stop. It was raining, and her lecture had been canceled. She invited me in under her umbrella, and we stood so close our shoulders brushed. Neither of us moved. Inside the small cafe, she stirred her coffee without drinking it. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she whispered. "How should I look at you then?" "As if I'm someone you could have." The words hung there, fragile and trembling. And then she smiled, softly, like she'd said too much. I wanted to tell her that I didn't care about the rules, about the age gap, about her ring that she'd stopped wearing but still kept in her bag. But I didn't, because she was right. We were standing in a moment that couldn't last, even as it begged to. When I walked her home that evening, she paused by her gate, umbrella still dripping. I turned to leave, but she reached out, fingers grazing my wrist. Not a grab, not a pull, just a touch, light enough to disappear if I breathed wrong. "Good night, Noah," she said, her voice barely more than rain. And even as I walked away, I could still feel her hand, a ghost against my skin, a promise neither of us dared to name. It happened 3 weeks after that night in the rain. She'd stopped texting as often, replies shorter, colder. I told myself it was for the best until I saw her again. She came into the cafe where we used to meet, wearing that same gray coat, hair tied loosely. She didn't see me at first. She was laughing with him, her husband. I hadn't met him before, but I didn't need an introduction. The way he placed his hand on her back, casual and heavy, told me everything. She caught my eye then mid-laugh. The smile froze. Her husband turned to see what she was looking at, and in that moment, her whole body went still, like a photograph that had forgotten how to move. I left before they did. By the time I reached the street, "You already have." She looked at me then, eyes shining, lips parted just enough to say something and not say it at all. "You think this is easy for me?" she asked. "No," I said quietly, "but it's real." For a second, the air between us felt alive. Her hand brushed mine, trembling, unintentional, or maybe too intentional. The distance shrank until I could feel her breath on my cheek. And then, a voice from outside. "Elena? You here?" Her husband. She stepped back so quickly it hurt. The color drained from her face. "Don't say anything," she whispered. I nodded. He entered a moment later, smiling like he still believed in something. "I've been looking everywhere for you," he said, wrapping an arm around her waist. She flinched, barely, but he didn't notice. "Just catching up with an old student," she said smoothly. Her voice didn't shake. Mine might have. I forced a smile. "Good to see you, sir." "Likewise," he said. "You were one of her favorites, weren't you?" Elena laughed, too quickly. He was just passionate about his work. They left together. But before the door closed, she turned back, just once. Her eyes met mine, full of everything we weren't allowed to say. And in that look was the truth neither of us could undo. We'd already crossed the line. We just hadn't been caught yet. I told myself I'd stop, that I'd delete her number, erase the messages, pretend none of it ever happened. But when something burns slow enough, you start to mistake the smoke for warmth. A week after seeing her with her husband, Elena stopped coming to the cafe. She didn't answer my texts, and my studio felt heavier without her voice echoing in it. Then one night, just past 11, my phone lit up again. "Elena, can I come by?" No explanation. No hesitation in my reply. When she arrived, she was wearing a dark coat, hair damp from rain again. Her hands were shaking, not from cold, but from something she didn't want to name. I opened the door wider. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," she said, stepping inside anyway. She wandered the studio like it was a place she'd dreamed of once. Her eyes caught on a photo, hers, the one I'd taken months ago at her gallery. She smiled faintly. "You still have this?" "I couldn't delete it," I admitted. "I tried." She turned, meeting my eyes. You shouldn't say things like that. You've said that before, I said softly. Her breath hitched. And you never listen. Something inside me cracked. Then tell me to stop, I said, voice trembling. Tell me this means nothing. Tell me I imagined all of it. Elena's lips parted, but no sound came. She took a step closer instead. You think I don't want to? Then do it, I whispered. Her eyes filled. Not tears exactly, but the ache that comes before them. I can't, she said finally. That was the moment everything broke open. Months of restraint, of pretending, gone in one breath. I don't remember who moved first. Just the sound of rain hitting the windows, the scent of her perfume, the way her fingers brushed against mine like a dare. I could feel her pulse through her skin, fast, terrified, alive. She looked up at me, eyes wide, lips trembling. This is wrong, she said. I know. Then why? Because you make me forget what wrong feels like. Her eyes closed as if the words themselves hurt. She pressed a hand to my chest, maybe to push me away, maybe to stay steady. For a second, the whole world narrowed. Just the sound of our breathing, the small distance between us, the way her ring glinted faintly under the light, even though she hadn't worn it in weeks. Then, suddenly she stepped back. I shouldn't have come, she whispered. Before I could answer, her phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up, husband calling. Her face went pale. Neither of us moved. The phone kept ringing, loud, relentless, until she finally reached out and turned it face down, silencing the world outside. And then she looked at me, voice breaking into a whisper that felt like a confession. I don't know who I'm lying to anymore. And before I could speak, before I could decide whether to stop her or follow her into whatever came next, she reached up, brushed her fingers against my jaw, and the room went utterly still. Cut to black. For 2 days after that night, silence was the only thing we shared. No calls, no messages, just the echo of what almost happened. I thought maybe that was how it would end, quietly, without a goodbye, just the way forbidden things do. But love, or whatever we were becoming, doesn't disappear just because it's inconvenient. On the third morning, a message arrived. Not from Elena, from her husband. Noah, I think we should talk. Over coffee, man to man. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, the words rearranging themselves in my head. My stomach turned cold. He knew. We met at the same cafe where Elena and I used to sit. He was calm, too calm. His eyes studied me the way someone studies damage, trying to decide if it's reparable or not. I've seen the messages, he said quietly. I know what's been going on. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. He didn't shout, didn't accuse. You decide. She said it was harmless. Just friendship. You believe that. I looked away. Does it matter what I believe? He smiled, tired, bitter. It does when you're in love with my wife. The words landed like a confession I hadn't given yet. Later that night, I couldn't stop replaying the conversation. How he said was instead of is. How he didn't sound angry, just defeated. How part of me hated him less than I wanted to. I couldn't stay still. I drove to her house. Her car was gone, but the lights were on. I texted her anyway. Me, he knows. Elena, I know. Seconds later, Elena, he left. When she finally came to the door, her face was pale, eyes red. He found everything, she said before I could speak. The photos, the texts, even the one I deleted. My chest tightened. You told him it was just friendship? She nodded, voice shaking. I had to, and he believed you? Her silence was the answer. I stepped closer. You could come with me. She laughed, a quiet, broken sound. And go where? You think love fixes this? I don't care about fixing it. Well, I do. Her voice cracked, the dam finally breaking. I've spent my whole life cleaning up after mistakes I didn't mean to make. I can't let you be one of them. The words hit harder than I expected. But then she softened, eyes glistening. I told him it was over, she whispered, that I'd never see you again. My heart stopped. Did you mean it? She didn't answer right away. She stepped forward, touched my chest lightly, like she was saying goodbye with her hands. And then, barely audible, I told him that because he was standing right behind me when I said it. I froze. The door creaked open wider behind her. A shadow shifted in the hallway. Elena's eyes widened, not at me, but past me, and a voice from the dark said, "So, this is the boy." Fade to black. The air inside her house felt like static, every sound sharper than it should have been. Her husband stood in the doorway, eyes heavy but calm in a way that made everything worse. Elena froze beside me, one hand still half raised, as if she'd forgotten how to move. "So," he said softly, "this is the boy." The words weren't cruel, but they carried a weight that filled the room. I opened my mouth, but Elena spoke first. "Please don't." He cut her off. "Don't what?" "Don't ask the question you've already answered." He turned to me then. "Did you love her?" It wasn't an accusation. Just a question, a quiet one, but one that left nowhere to hide. I looked at Elena. Her eyes said don't, but her silence said please. "Yes," I said. "I did." Her husband exhaled, long and tired. "Then at least one of you can still tell the truth." He walked past us, down the hallway, and the sound of a door closing somewhere deeper in the house broke whatever spell we were under. Elena leaned against the wall, trembling. "You shouldn't have said that." "You wanted me to," I said quietly. "You just couldn't." She looked up, eyes wet. "You don't understand what you've done." I took a step closer. "Then explain it to me. Because all I've ever done is love you in the only way I know how, honestly." Her voice cracked. "Honesty ruins things." "Then let it ruin us," I whispered. For a moment, neither of us moved. The storm outside pressed against the windows, thunder murmuring like it was listening too. Elena took a slow breath, then finally spoke. "He's leaving. He said he's moving out tomorrow." I thought I'd feel free, but I just feel empty. I wanted to touch her, but something in her voice stopped me. "I never meant to break anything," she said. "I just wanted to feel seen again. You gave me that. You really did." I swallowed hard. "And what about now?" She smiled sadly. "Now I see myself again, too. And it's not who I thought I was." She stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of her skin. Her eyes searched mine like she was memorizing them. "If I stay," she whispered, "I'll lose what's left of me. And if you go," she hesitated, "then maybe I'll learn how to live again." I nodded, even as something inside me splintered. "Then go," I said. Her hand reached up, brushed against my cheek, a touch full of everything we couldn't say. She leaned in, not to kiss me, but to rest her forehead against mine. For a second, the world stilled. Two hearts, one breath, both breaking quietly. Then she stepped back. At the door, she turned once more. "Don't hate me for ending it this way." "I couldn't," I said, "even if you never came back." She smiled, soft, tired, real. And then she was gone. Outside, the storm had stopped. The night was too quiet. I stood there, staring at the empty doorway, realizing something that hurt and healed at once. Sometimes love doesn't end because it fades. It ends because someone finally tells the truth. It's been 4 months since that night. Sometimes I still expect her message to appear. The way her name used to light up my phone like a small, familiar sunrise. But never does. Elena kept her word. She didn't come back. And yet, she's still everywhere. In the smell of rain on concrete. In the quiet hum of my studio before dawn. In every photograph I take where the light touches something soft and undeserved. I saw her once, though, by accident. I was setting up for an exhibition in the city when I caught sight of her through the glass. She looked different, hair shorter, eyes steadier. She wasn't wearing her ring. For a second, I thought she'd seen me too, but she didn't look my way. She just smiled at something or someone and walked on. And it hit me then, in a way it hadn't before. Maybe that's what loving someone like her means. You don't get to keep them. You just get to know them once, deeply, quietly, and hope the world a little better because of it. I still think about what she said that night. If I stay, I'll lose what's left of me. At the time, I thought it was an excuse. Now I understand. Love isn't always about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting the other person become whoever they were too afraid to be. And maybe, just maybe, that's what she gave me too. Because I started shooting again. Not just people, but moments. Glances, hands brushing, reflections in train windows. The small, quiet things that mean everything when you know what loss feels like. Last week, I sold a photograph titled The Space Between Us. It was from that night, the last time I saw her, her hand on my face, our foreheads touching, the storm outside caught in the window behind us. The buyer asked who she was. I just said, someone who taught me what silence sounds like when it's honest. I think love changes us, not in the way movies promise, but in the small ways that stay hidden. It softens what was hard. It teaches us how to see again. And when I pass by her old street, I don't look for her anymore. I just whisper a thank you under my breath. Not because I miss her, but because I finally understand why it had to end. Maybe that's the real ending. Not heartbreak, not regret, just the quiet knowing that some stories aren't meant to last forever. They're meant to change you so you can finally live the next one better. So tell me, did you enjoy the story? And what kind of stories would you like to hear next?